All right. Thank you everyone for joining us for the NIH Director's Transformative Research Award Q&A webinar. We're glad to have you with us. Um, please submit your questions in the WebEx Q&A box. That's if you look under More with the three dots, it should pull down some options, and you can click on the Q&A box. It'll pull uh, pull it up for you, and we ask that you submit your questions that you'd like answered for during the webinar in that box. And as a reminder, we will not be answering anything that's scientific inquiries or questions that are very highly specific to you and your situation. Those would probably be better answered with an individual email or discussion with Trish. But just some housekeeping items. Once again, please use that Q&A box for your questions for the webinar. And once again, we will not be answering specific scientific or situationally specific questions. We're trying to keep things as applicable to as many of the audience members as possible. Please email us, though, if you have additional questions. You can do that by contacting us at transformative_awards@mail.nih.gov. We are recording this, and the recording and the slides will be posted on our website at commonfund.nih.gov/TRA, probably 1 to 2 weeks after this. We have to get it approved for posting, so it'll take us a little bit of time. But you can go to the website and see the slides and the recordings there. And I also would like to point you to our website. It has a lot of useful information and resources that are there for you to get additional guidance on how to apply or questions about the review. And we have this wonderful application guidance in our application and award guide on the website that will walk you through the specifics of applying, and it includes example applications if you want to look at them. Please keep in mind that these examples may be old and some of them may not conform to current requirements in the funding opportunity, especially regarding anonymity. So you want to make sure you follow the instructions in the funding opportunity. But we wanted to provide you some examples of ideas or how people formatted their applications in the past that were successful. So please check out our website for more information. All right, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today's webinar. I'm Becky Miller. I'm a program officer and program leader in the Office of the Director. We also have Trish Lebowski, who's the program leader for the High Risk, High Reward Research Program and who oversees the Transformative Research Award Initiative, who's also in the Office of the Director. We are hoping that Dr. Elena Smirnova will be able to join us. She's the Scientific Review Officer from the Center for Scientific Review. She's having some login issues, so we're hoping that she'll be able to join us shortly. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Trish, though.
Thanks, Becky. Guessing you can hear me okay. So what I want to do, well, first of all, thanks for coming, everybody. It looks like we have a nice, healthy number of people in the webinar, which is great to see. So the first thing I want to do is kind of orient you to where we are at NIH, because it's a big place, right? So the High Risk, High Reward Research Program is in a smallish office in the Office of the Director. It's called the Office of Strategic Coordination. And the main thing that we do is we administer the NIH Common Fund, okay? We have a lot of programs and they're captured there on the slide in front of you. The Common Fund was set up back in 2004 to address special areas of research that require multiple different institutes and centers to come together and work on something across the NIH. It's meant to be catalytic. These programs cycle in and out. And again, this is a list of many of them here for you to look at. We have 27 at the moment. They usually last maximum around 10 years. Some are shorter. So they, as I said, they cycle in and then they cycle out, new ones come up and old ones retire. So we divide them up into these three pretty broad categories. And one of the reasons that we put this up for you is not only to let you know where the money comes from for the Transformative Research Award, but also because these Common Fund programs are likely to be very useful for your research. Of course, we have funding opportunities in various areas, but there's also access to high-end instrumentation, exemplified by the cryo-EM effort we have on the left there, transformational science and discovery. We also, almost all of these programs have really unique and very useful databases. We have things from epigenomics to the microbiome, all kinds of databases and access to unique resources. There's reagents, there are protocols, there are all sorts of things that could be helpful for your research. So again, HR, as we call ourselves, high risk, high reward, is down there on the left, and it's part of transformational science and discovery. And really, if you read the subtitle, we're looking for new scientific principles, models, research resources, paradigms. Okay, so the next slide. These are the 4 programs that make up our high risk, high reward program. I should say they're the 4 award programs. So Pioneer, New Innovator, the Transformative Research Award that we're here to talk about today, and the Early Independence Award. And I like this artwork because it really depicts the way you hopefully are thinking about your project, and that it's way outside the box. It's outside multiple boxes. And that's what we're looking for with these projects. Now they're designed, the 4 award programs across the board are designed to support scientists at all career stages, from senior established scientists, early stage investigators, down to recent graduates skipping the postdoc, right? That's the Early Independence Award. And all of these are, what they have in common is that you need to be proposing bold, high risk, high impact projects, something that's very different and will really make a difference if successful. Now, on the next slide, we function through annual funding opportunities, or as they're called now, notice of funding opportunity. So each one of these awards has a new funding opportunity published each year. And we know they're not fun to read, but we urge you to read the funding opportunity to which you are applying, because there's a lot of detail in there. And I think especially for the Transformative Research Award, there's really critical detail that if you don't follow, it's possible you won't be reviewed. So in the next slide, we want high risk, high impact ideas. So we want, I mean, of course we want them to work eventually, but we are comfortable with there being an element of risk here that you might not see in a normal RPG, a normal maybe R01 that you would submit. And of course, the impact, if successful, has to be equally high. We do not require any preliminary data, and we do not want you to include a detailed experimental plan. And I'll tell you that if you do, the reviewers will review it as such, and likely they'll think of it more as an R01 than as a Transformative Research Award. So that's an important element to think about. So we welcome any topic that's encompassed in the NIH mission, any biological, behavioral science project, social, biomedical, all of those that you can read there in front of you, clinical research, any of these we want you to think about applying. One of the questions I get all the time is my area of research, fill in the blank, appropriate for the TRA program? And I will say, as long as it's in the NIH mission, yes, it's fine. Then you have to go on to make sure that it's risky, that it's high reward and all of that. But as long as you're in this very large umbrella, please, yes, apply. So for all 4 programs, of course, we encourage applications from investigators from diverse backgrounds and from the full spectrum of eligible institutions. In the funding opportunity, I think it's section 3, there's the criteria that you need to be eligible. So it's important to make sure that your institution, and you might not be at a university, you might be at a company or a nonprofit, is eligible. So yes, we would like to encourage anyone to apply. Now, I want to point out to you, I mentioned that we are interested in covering all areas of science. This is the High Risk, High Reward Working Group. So all of these individuals, that little acronym after everyone's name, is one of the NIH institutes or centers across the whole agency. And you can see that they're all represented here. I mean, we have people that are doing all areas of science, and this is important because these individuals help out with review, maybe administration, with all kinds of things, but they're paying attention. So we really do want to encourage you, if you're in an area of research that you think is not well covered by our portfolio, please come. We would like it to be included. And these people are just indispensable. It's amazing how much work they do and what a wonderful group of people it is to work with. So now let's talk a little bit more about the Transformational Research Award specifically. So this was started, it was the third of the 4 programs, started back in 2009. And the goal is it's to support exceptionally innovative or unconventional research projects. And the project, if successful, has to have the potential to either develop or overturn fundamental paradigms. We want to shift dogma with these projects, okay? It's not incremental science. There's a place for that at NIH, but this is not it. This is really supposed to make a difference. The program is open to individuals or teams at any career stage. ESIs are welcome. Established investigators are welcome. It could be a single PI application or a team of investigators. As I said earlier, there's no preliminary data required. If you include it, the reviewers will critique it, but you are not required to put it in there. The budget is flexible. You tell us how much it costs to do the research. It has to be well justified. It will be looked at very closely if you're to get an award, but you do not have to get approval before you apply for a large budget request. It's fine. You tell us how much it costs to do that science. We use an R01 mechanism, but it cannot be renewed the way a regular R01 is. So that's a little different too. And we were also piloting since 2001, so this is our 5th year, I believe, an anonymized review process, which I'll get into a little bit more in the next couple slides. So I mentioned this is an R01, but we use it very differently than the R01s that you're probably used to. There is a specific aims page, so it's a separate upload, right? Specific aims page, but we ask you not to have a list of specific aims on that page. It's supposed to be a 1-page summary or distillation of your project and why it belongs in the Transformative Research Award category. So we give you headings, and there are 2 sections. One is significance, innovation, and impact, and the second is insight and rationale. And it's really important when we get to review to think about that 1 page, because that will be the first thing that's reviewed once Elena tells us about the review process. So the research strategy section, again, it's similar to a standard R01, but it's different. We don't want substantial preliminary data. We don't want a lot of experimental details. Instead, again, we give you headings that are listed here, and we want an overview of the project. So set up the context for the reviewer. Why is this important? We want something on the approach, of course, not a detailed experimental plan, but describe the logic that you're using to set up this project. And make sure that you can convince reviewers that you're going to do it in a robust way and it's going to be rigorously done. You don't have to include, for example, a power analysis, but you might quote your power analysis to show exactly that you know how many samples or mice or whatever it is that you're using, how many you need to include. Explain why this is exceptionally innovative. What's new and different here? What is really special? Are you using new technology? Are you bringing together state-of-the-art technology in a new way to address a new concept? There's a lot of ways that innovation can be defined. So you define why or how this project is innovative. So explain why your project is appropriate for a transformative research award and not a traditional R01. And it can't just be, I don't have any preliminary data. That's not really good enough. You want to explain that even though it's risky, if it works, it's going to change paradigms. It's really going to influence not just your lab and set you up for the next, I don't know, 10 or 20 years of research, but also the field. You might be producing novel things, data, tools, technology, whatever it is that you are going to deliver at the end of 5 years, if successful. Talk about how that could really change things for the scientific field. And then the last category is put in a timeline. Make sure reviewers understand what you're going to do, how long it's going to take. If you have certain decision points, a go or no go decision point, include that in there so that they know, they have to understand you've thought about this really carefully and you have a very robust and rigorous research plan for the question that you're trying to answer here. The next slide. Some things to think about in that research strategy. Remember that, and Elaine will talk more about review in a bit, but remember that even if the reviewers are subject matter experts, they might not be topic experts, okay? So you need to make sure that your document, your logic, your rationale can be understood by people that are outside the field. And if you make it to the third round of review, that's really important because I can almost guarantee that the reviewers will not have that subject matter expertise. So consider your audience very carefully. You might think about beginning your whole research strategy with a description of the landscape of the field and state-of-the-art challenges, gaps, things that you're going to address with this project. So put it in context, put everything in context so that the reviewers who might not be subject matter experts can really understand what's going to be new here. I mean, why is this new and different? So what, right? Convince them that it is new and different. Be careful with jargon. You want to really ease the reader into jargon. I would recommend trying to avoid jargon if at all possible. You don't want these reviewers to come away saying, well, it sounds okay, but I don't understand half of it because they wrote it for a specialist and I'm not. So, you know, I'm not really sure. So that you end up with like 3s or 4s. That's not going to do you well. So think about how you're going to deal with the jargon so that you're accurate, but you're not too hard to read. Think about having maybe some colleagues that are outside your field have a read of this before you submit it and tell them to be very honest with their red pen or their red font or their comment track changes. Like, I don't get this. What are you talking about? Make sure that they're honest with you. It's important to reach the audience that that's gonna be reviewing this. So even though we don't want a detailed experimental plan, you know, buffers and microliters of this in times of incubations, no, you need to make it clear that you have a plan, that you've thought about it very, very deeply, and that you have a rigorous, reproducible plan to address these hypotheses and answer the questions you're posing. So risk, you want to identify what is risky, what might not work here. Someone I already saw asked, what's the definition of risk? If it's a human subject thing, you cannot risk people's health, life, safety. No, you can't. We're not talking about that kind of risk. The risk might be that it might not work. But if it doesn't work, does that mean you get nothing out of this, or would there still be a lot gained from the project? We are comfortable with risk, but you've got to convince the reviewers that the reward would be so great that it's worth it. Oh, right. The research has to be rigorous. Make sure that you would include how you validate things that might be new technologies. How are you going to make sure they're valid, right? Again, as I mentioned, you might provide estimates of sample numbers, either human samples or animal subjects, or always include sex as a biological variable if it's appropriate for the research you're doing. The next slide. A couple of years ago, 2019, the advisory committee to the NIH director looked really hard at our high risk, high reward program, and they issued a report that you can go click on and see that report. It's public. And they found that the HRHR research in general, not just the Transformative Research Award, but the 4 programs I mentioned before, is very effective at supporting innovative and impactful research. The research products that come out of this program are wonderful. However, they were concerned about that underrepresented groups, people from underrepresented groups were not applying at the same rate to these HRHR programs that they are reflected in the workforce. So that was a concern, and that was broadened to think about the fact that we don't want folks from underrepresented groups to be adversely affected by the review process. In general, the awards were tending to go to a subset of very strong research-intensive institutions. So we wanted to try to, the advisory committee to the director challenged us to try to think about how we could broaden both the awardee institutions and the individuals receiving the awards. So one recommendation that we're following now, and you're going to hear about in a minute, is to pilot this anonymized review process. And that's what we're doing and have been since 2021. So the next slide. The intention of this, there's a couple intentions, but is to focus the reviewers and to focus your document on the science, on the research idea, on what's innovative and what the impact would be. It is not to be focused on who you are and where you are. Eventually, the reviewers will know who you are and where you are. But for most of the review, 2/3 of it, the identity of the PIs and your institution cannot be in the application. So as I said, we started this in 2021, and the first look at it, it's early. We haven't evaluated all of the years yet, and we are probably not powered to do it, unfortunately, but we had a substantial fraction of applicants that were interested in applying because of this anonymization. I've had many people say to me that they loved writing this because they could focus on the science. So try to think about it that way. The job is not for you to hide who you are. It's to focus on the science, on the project and what you want to do. So we've done a very deep process evaluation, and applicants said they are able to prepare their applications that could convey innovation and impact without names, both of their names, people's names, and without institutional names. Okay. Reviewers are able to evaluate innovation and impact with that information without names, so that's good. And we are continuing the pilot this year again for a 5th year. So 2 of the documents, and only 2 of the documents, need to be anonymized, okay? So remember, this is not the entire application, it's just the specific aims page and the research strategy section, okay? So 13 pages total have to be anonymized. And there's a bulleted list of things that you cannot include. You have to turn in the entire application at, by the due date. Everything is due at the same time, but those two PDFs, when you upload them, must conform to these criteria. If they don't, your application will be administratively withdrawn without review. So in a nutshell, no names. That means not just your name as the PI or your collaborator. It also means, I don't know, Schmidt et al. For 2023, some great paper. That's a name. That's not allowed. It doesn't matter if it's a name, if it comes from your lab or not. It's a name. It's not allowed. No institutional names, even if they're whether they're in the proposal or not. I mean, even if you're getting, I don't know, samples from someone at University of wherever. No, you don't say where you're getting samples. You just say, I'm getting samples from a university or something like that. You do no names, okay? And it doesn't matter, again, whether they're participating or not. Don't mention any awards or honors that, I'm a Nobel Prize winner. No, don't put it in there. No hyperlinks, nothing that references your accomplishments, such things like, we developed, make it up, ChIP-seq technology. We developed this really cool microscopy approach. No, don't say that. You say, this is a really cool microscopy approach we're going to use. That's fine. But you don't say that what you have done in the past, okay? The citations, that's pretty easy. Just use numerical citations, but be careful because EndNote will conspire against you. If you screw up the brackets and the edges of your reference, either EndNote or whatever you're using, sometimes a reference is left sort of broken inside the text. And if it says Miller et al., it doesn't matter who Miller is, that application has to be withdrawn. So then there's this last bullet at the bottom, any other text from which the identity of any participating individual or institution can be reasonably inferred. It's gone. Now, the point is not to hide who you are, and I have a lot of people say to me, but they're going to know it's me because I'm the only person that does X, Y, and Z. That's not the point. The point is not to give the reviewers a quiz. Who is this? The point is that you are to focus on the science and not advertise who you are and where you are. So yeah, it's tricky. So the next slide, be sure that you follow those instructions really carefully. And again, it's just those two sections, specific aims and research strategy. If you have a question, I'm not sure about this, is it or isn't it? It's really much better to err on the side of follow the spirit of the anonymization. Think about what we're saying today to focus on the science rather than trying to game the system. So everything else in the rest of the application is the way you're used to. All the SF 424 forms are completely the way you're used to. You don't need to anonymize anything else. In fact, you shouldn't, right? Your bio sketch will not be shared until that final stage of review. So you can describe what you need to describe about your suitability for the research in that bio sketch, because it's not going to be reviewed for the first two stages. Okay, the next slide. We know this is hard. We know this is challenging. So a couple years ago, some of our colleagues at the Center for Scientific Review developed this awesome tool that I really encourage everyone to use. This is the tool we use to check your applications and make sure they're anonymized. So please use it. All you do is you take your specific aims page or your research strategy and you simply upload it into this tool. And for the research strategy, it might take a little while. For the aims page, it comes back very quickly. And any potential violation will be highlighted in that document. Very simple. And it's only potential violations. It's up to you that you have to decide whether or not that's a violation. If you say something like Watson and Crick, that I know you're not Watson and Crick, and I know that you're not trying to subvert the system with that. So that would probably be fine. But what you really need to think about is this in the spirit of anonymization. So the tool is designed to err to be more false positives than not, but you are the person, the PI, that's going to hit the submit button. You're the one that's responsible to decide whether or not it's a violation. So after everything's submitted, NIH staff, myself, and others are going to use this tool to screen your two documents, the Ames page and the research strategy page. And please, please do it right, because I don't want to send you that email that says it has to be withdrawn. And, you know, that's what we have to do if we need to do. So this tool will screen text. It will also screen figures. But I caution you, be really careful with figure legends. Sometimes you forget and you miss things in figure legends. So make sure that that you double check those. And I've also had people, they'll screen their documents, they come back, they fix things, and then somebody else that's helping them write edits things a little bit and, you know, breaks the anonymity, and then, you know, that could be bad. So please make sure it's your final document too gets a last read with the tool. Okay, and the next slide, this shows you where you can find the tool. So on our webpage, Common Fund NIH.gov/TRA, T-R-A, and I find it by just saying NIH TRA, but I may have trained my computer. But there it is on the bottom. It's the TRA for Transformative Research Award, anonymization track tool. And you click on that, and that takes you to the tool. And this is what it looks like. You have to log in with your .gov login. And, you know, this tells you what to do. You upload, it should be a PDF. So you upload your document, and then after a while, then you can go away, go to lunch, whatever. It'll come back, you'll get an email, you click on it, and you can open it. And this is sort of what it looks like, okay? So then you can download the document and take a look at it. The next slide, this is the blurred out version, right? Because we didn't want to violate anything, but this is kind of what you'll get back. So there'll be highlighted text that could be violations, but again, it's up to you to decide whether or not it's right or not. If you think, no, that's fine, you can leave it in, it's fine. But again, you know, things like Watson Crick, ELISA, you know, if you write in there that you're buying something from Promega or Sigma or whatever, it'll highlight it, and that's okay. You don't have to worry about that. But go through it and just, you know, be really careful, because I don't want to send you that email. In the next slide, the other thing that's important to note is that we have a new, there's a help button over here on the side, track support, okay? If you have questions and if you have problems with it, please click on that, and you can email with the team, and they can help you. You can ask me, but I won't know the answer. One of the things that's new across NIH, and that you do have to include, it's NIH policy, are these data management and sharing plans. So make sure it's attached in the other plan section, right? And these should not be more than 2 pages. You want to include all the things bulleted out there, what type of data you're producing, what tools you might be producing, and then how you're going to preserve those tools, when you're going to do it, and how will people access it. There's a lot of information about this. It's not on our web page. It's down there in red, sharing.nih.gov. Go there and look. There's a lot of FAQs. But this is very important. It's important for all your NIH grants now. If you have costs associated with this, make sure you include them in the budget and justify them. And the budget gets looked at by reviewers, but it doesn't affect your score. Elena will talk about that more, but the plan will be reviewed closely by NIH staff if an award is to be made. If there's not an award to be made, you won't hear anything about it. It will be written in stone eventually, but it is not at the application stage that we can make adjustments. If we're going to make an award, we can make adjustments through the just-in-time process. It will be written in stone. It becomes a term and condition of the award. So take this very seriously. I think you already know about it through the rest of your NIH endeavors, but make sure that you include it here. Okay, now I'm gonna take a break and pass the torch over to Elena. I think I saw her in here. There she is. Great.
Hello. Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. I'm glad you made it.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Trish. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm Yelena Smirnova. This is my contact information. I am at NIH Center for Scientific Review. At CSR, we review applications for all institutes, and we are happy to do HR applications. So I'm looking forward to see applications. As a scientific review officer, my job is to organize and manage review process of your applications. So let me walk you through this review process. Can I have a next slide? Yeah, as Trish already alluded to, so it's a complex, multi-stage process. There are 3 phases and there are 2 groups of reviewers. Initial stage and the final stage of review is done by editorial board. So these are people with broad expertise. They might know nothing about specifics of your particular field. So I'll talk a little bit more about this later. And topic expert, subject expert review, that's only if your application progresses to the phase 2. Also, as was explained, so for the most part, the review process only concerns with anonymized sections of your applications, specific aims and research strategy. Only at the very end, so phase 3B, the entire applications will be available to the editorial board panelists. So next one, please. I'll go a little bit more in details about each and every phase. So phase 1 is initial editorial review of application. So editorial board is going to look at the application submitted. Usually it's about 16-20 reviewers who are senior scientists. Because we get applications to all possible topics covered by NIH, we try to select people with very broad expertise, and collective expertise of editorial board should span diverse scientific areas applicable for NIH research portfolio. Each application gets assigned to 4 editors, and each editors get assigned 40 to 50 applications. The only thing they look at this stage is 1 page from your entire application package. They looked at anonymized specific aims page during phase 1. So this is just to underscore the importance of this 1-page document from your entire application. So based on this page, so the editors place them into bins, reflecting the assessment of whether this is really truly transformative potential impact projects. Based on these preliminary scores, bins, they identify the top scoring subset of applications, plus any rescues, and these are the applications which will be advanced to phase 2. So yeah, the goal of this phase 1 review is to identify a subset of applications which will move forward to the stage 2. So this process starts with when we receive your applications. Due date is September 3rd this year. After that, NIH staff will look at your applications, and as Trish said, we use track tool, and we will check what the sections which is supposed to be anonymized, pass the test. That's gonna take us early mid-September, and after that, the specific aim page will be forwarded to editorial board for this phase 1 review, which is about late September to mid-November. Next one. Right, in the next stage, so your applications which were forwarded from phase 1, so will be reviewed by subject matter topic experts. Usually it's about 70, 80 applications at this point. This is like about number. It really depends how many applications we will receive. So the top, about half, so selected from phase 1, they will be sent to, we call them mail reviewers. They're not really mail reviewers, it's electronic review. Yeah, but they will be seen by reviewers who have expertise in the area of science presented in each application. Each application will be assigned to 3 mail reviewers, and at this point, we are looking at both specific aims page and research strategy section of your applications, both anonymized documents. The goal for mail reviewers, they read the documents, they think about them, and then they provide written comments. They address significance, transformative impact of the proposed work, level of innovation, and logic of approach. They don't have access to comment about investigator or environment. They really look at the science in your applications. This is happening, the timeline for this is December 24 to mid-February 25. All right, and finally, like for phase 3, the applications return to editorial board. So it's the same editorial board as in phase 1. The editors will have access to, again, so still the same anonymized specific aims page, research strategies they have not seen before, plus they get comments from mail reviewers from phase 2. At this point, each editor is assigned to slightly smaller review load, 15, 20 applications. They look at them, so it's still anonymized parts of your application plus mail reviewer input. And they're asked to provide preliminary scores. They take into account both mail reviewer evaluations, but also their own assessment of the impact of a proposed work. So the goal of a phase 3A is to identify the top half of the application from this set, which will be moved forward for full review discussion in phase 3B. Right, so that's gonna happen February to late March, and they identify roughly like the top half of the best ones based on their preliminary assessments, preliminary scores, and any rescues. So, these applications will be moved forward to phase 3B, which is the final stage. At this point, and only at this point, so the editors will have access to the entire applications. Your full application will be made available to them. They will, in addition to the significance, innovation, and approach they considered previously, now they can evaluate investigator, environment, human subject, vertebrate animals, multi-PI plan for final review discussion. The applications will be discussed by the panel. It's not only assigned editors, entire panel provides input, and the applications will get final scores. So this review meeting where the panel convene and applications are discussed by the panel is anticipated to happen late March, possibly April next year. And again, so like, yeah, about half of applications which were in phase 3A will be discussed. And the last one, so yeah, again, so this is the overview of the entire review process with multiple stages and how applications advance. two important things to remember. So you submit the entire application so September 3rd, and at this point, so after we go to phase 1, only subset of them will gonna advance for further review. But you will not get any interim results until the entire set of applications progress to the final stage. We had review meeting and the results are released. And another thing, because of this anonymized system of how this is reviewed, as a contact PI, at one point, you will see your application simply just disappear from your Commons account. You won't be able to see it because we stripped down the investigator information. So don't panic. We still have your application, hopefully. We do, and it will reappear. So in phase 3B, when it's again, so the entire application will be available to editorial board. So just to let you know, that's kind of a consequence of how this anonymization works. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Trish and Elena. We appreciate that. So now we're beginning the Q&A portion of this webinar. Once again, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. And as a reminder, if you have specific scientific questions or things that are situationally specific to you, we ask that you please email us instead so we can answer them offline at transformative_awards@mail.nih.gov. And we ask that your questions that you submit here be topics that can be more broadly applicable to the other attendees. I've broken up the questions that we've received into different subject areas. So we'll try to answer them within these different bins. It won't be perfect, but we will try. So I ask for patience in your questions as we try to get through them in the appropriate category. We will do our best to get them all addressed, though, so no need to enter them repeatedly. All right, so the first topic area we're going to discuss is eligibility. All right, and Trish, one of the questions we received is, are early stage research proposals, which focus on foundational and potentially transformative scientific concepts, encouraged and considered equally competitive as clinical stage projects? So early stage research proposals versus clinical stage projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we invite all kinds of, at every stage, the research. We would like to see both. And we'd be happy to, if the reviewers score it well, be happy to support either kind of research. The key is the transformative potential of either one. If it's early stage research that's completely descriptive and exploratory, it depends. I mean, I could see where that would work if you're describing something that is really going to shift a paradigm. No one's been able to look at this before, and now you have a new technology where you can, that could work. But if it's something that would be more iterative, then probably not. So the transformative potential is key.
All right. Another question, are there specific aspects or criteria we should emphasize in our proposal to ensure it meets the expectations for innovation and transformative potential at these earlier stages?
Well, we want to convince the reviewers that whatever you produce at the end of 5 years is going to have impact. So you need to be looking at a significant problem, and the results need to have impact. I like to tell people, think about what your deliverables are going to be at the end of 5 years, and what would the field do with those deliverables? Not just you in your lab, and yeah, this could give you fodder for research for the next 20 years, but what about the rest of the field? Would people use this new technology? Would they use your new findings to change how they're looking at their own research. So, and of course, then the innovation involved as well. So, I don't know if that really answers that, Becky, but that's what I think is more important.
Yeah. All right, we have a question. Let's see. Can we have multiple PIs in the application? And are individuals or teams preferred?
Yeah, you can have multiple PIs. And in fact, this is the only one of our programs that includes that you can have multiple PIs. There's no preference. You can also have a single PI. There's no preference at the funding decision stage that we want to fund teams over single PIs. No. We look at scores and how transformative the work being proposed is. But this, if you want to propose high risk, high reward research and you're a team, this is the program for you.
Excellent. And I know you touched on this before, but we do have some additional questions about helping define risk. And how do you know if your project is considered high risk?
Yeah, that's a really hard one to define. And, I leave it to you and as the applicant to define how is this project risky? I mean, if it's risky and then it might not work, that's one way it could be risky. Again, if you have human subjects, you can't risk their health, not that kind of risk. That's not what we're interested in supporting. But if it doesn't work and it's high risk, what else would be gained from it, right? You might talk about that in your application, because sometimes even when an experiment or a proposal, it doesn't work, you still learn a lot. So yeah, that's important too. Risk. I mean, I think that's the most important way to think about is that the reward would have to balance with the risk. If you have high risk but not much reward, then it probably would not fare too well. But if the reward would be amazing, we're comfortable with the fact that maybe some of it won't work. You should also include those inflection points, go, no go sort of milestones perhaps in your application. If this doesn't work, we're still going to do X, Y, and Z. You want to avoid things like interdependent aims as you would in any grant proposal. So if your very first aim is to develop some technology that might not work, there should be a backup plan. And if you're going to get down to some level of, I don't know, measurement that you don't get that far, talk about, well, how far will you get, and what will that bring you? That's a little abstract, but yeah.
All right. If you already have an HRHR grant, does that prevent eligibility for another?
Oh, no, of course not. That's fine. But it's also not required. Just because you have one doesn't mean that you will fare better in review.
All right. How important is new technology development for the application?
It depends on the question you're trying to answer. We often are told by applicants or awardees that we only like technology development grant, and that's not true. We want to open up all kinds of new research with this program. So technology development can be great, but it's not the only way to shift paradigms. So, but if you're doing it, this might be an interesting program for you.
All right. And do proposals focused on health disparities or equity or minority health do well in review, or
Oh,
has
sure.
has the anonymization helped reduce potential bias?
Oh, well, they do sometimes do well in review. I mean, sometimes any area of science does well in review, and we have funded health equity applications in the past. Last year, I think there were 2 of them last year. And what was the second half of that? Oh, if the anonymization has made a difference. We have not analyzed yet the final, the full 3 years at this point of data that we have. We should have that information later this summer. When we do, it will be published or on, at least on our website. We don't know yet where it will be, but we have a whole evaluation tab on our website where we share this information. But yeah, we don't know yet. It's likely that the number of awards made is not going to allow us to have a powered study, but we will be able to recognize trends for sure.
And I think it's important to note that there actually wasn't a bias that was found based on
Right.
the ACD working groups,
Thank
that's
you.
the advisory committee to the NIH director. They
Yeah.
did not find bias in the review process, but they wanted us to try this to help
Yes.
minimize any, see if
Thank
this
you, Becky.
process-
That's really important. Just because we're doing this doesn't mean that we thought that there was a problem. This was kind of a nice program that where we could do this because it was small enough that it would not impact all the R01s at NIH, but yet it was broad enough, different kinds of science, that it would be representative. So it was selected for that reason.
All right. Along the same vein, you mentioned that underrepresented groups are encouraged to apply. Are there any extra scores for those groups?
Extra
Or ex-
scores.
I think probably meant extra points or
I see.
special
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah, no, that's actually illegal. We cannot make funding recommendations based on race, ethnicity, sex, any of those things. But if there are applications that are essentially tied, that can be used to differentiate the applications from each other. So you can include that information maybe in your BioSketch, wherever you think it's appropriate. And it could be used at some level, but it's not like we will give extra points or the score would be changed based on that. No.
All right. And if the goal is to change the field, but we don't want to share our work with the field until IP is secured, should we apply?
That's interesting. Well, there's a data management sharing plan. If you are funded by NIH, you need to share your data. So you would want to explain when would be the appropriate time for your data to be shared. And if that plan is not acceptable, there could be problems making an award. So I can't really answer that directly, but I understand the concern. Yeah.
Can the proposal include examination of the ethical and social impact of the paradigm shifting research project?
Sure. Yeah. I don't see why not.
And can one
Maybe
PI
I'm not understanding that question, but to me, that seems like something you would want to include if there would be impact, or
Yeah.
even you think there might be impact. Yeah.
All right, and can one PI submit two applications?
Sure.
Yes. As long as they are distinct.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. You can never submit more than one NIH application that has the same science in it. Okay. As long as the two projects are different to each other, then it's fine.
All right, and is this funding opportunity different from last year's? And if so, how?
Not in a large way. No, it's not.
Yeah, I think the data management and sharing plan, that
No, we
information
have
changed,
to-
but that's because NIH as a whole kind of
Right,
changed where you put that
policies
information.
changed, yeah. But we had DMSPs last year too.
Yeah, it was just put in a
But
different
some of
different way.
Yeah, some of the information's a little bit different. But it's not like we're looking for a different type of science than we were previously, no.
Yeah.
We've had special transformative research awards focused in areas of science in the past, like COVID, for example. But this is our usual broad TRA.
Okay, excellent. All right, I think those are most of the eligibility questions that I see, so let's go ahead and move on to the application and submission. And we have quite a few here. All right. We would like to utilize the Naval Research Laboratory as a contractor or partner. What is allowed?
That's fine. You can utilize any entity that's eligible to collaborate. That's totally fine. Yeah. You'd probably subcontract, work with your grants office to figure out the appropriate budgetary implications, but it's fine with us if that is the right place for the work to be done.
Okay. Are there specific aspects or criteria we should emphasize in our proposal to ensure it meets the expectations for innovation and transformative potential at these early stages?
Well, I think you want to emphasize the transformative potential and the innovation. Um, maybe I'm not understanding that question. Um,
Yeah, I think it's more of kind of just figuring out whether or not what you're proposing meets, the people in the field believe that it's innovative and
Right.
transformational as well.
What's new here?
Yeah.
Think really hard about what's the paradigm in this field? What are you challenging and how? Um, I think those are the important things to think about. If you are successful, if you get the award and you're successful, what would change? I
Yes,
think
and
that's
and
another
it's
way to think about it.
yeah, and it's also helpful to remember who your reviewers are, that you're going to have
Yes.
non-topic experts reviewing these, and they need to be able to understand and appreciate what it is that you're hoping to achieve and the impacts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to explain the context of the field, right? As we mentioned, jargon. If you dive in really deeply into something that will then not be accessible to the general, smart scientist, but that is not in your area, you're probably going to do yourself a disservice. It probably won't review well.
All right. We note in the application materials that letters of reference will not be accepted. Are these the same as letters of support from potential collaborators? And should letters of support be included?
Right. So yes, letters of support can be included and they will not be viewed until that final part of the review, the stage 3B, right? They won't, the first two sets of reviewers are not going to see those. So I think it's important to articulate in the essay, in the research strategy, what your collaborators would be doing without, of course, without identifying them. Letters of reference are different than letters of support. Letters of reference are, just operationally, they're different. They're written by somebody and uploaded separately from your application. You don't see them as the PI. They're things, they're reference letters. Think about, applying for jobs or applying for tenure. They're not letters that you see. The support letters are usually more around the area of a collaborator, what they would provide, what they would do. Of course, they could talk about the project and how cool it is. We would expect that. We would not be surprised by that. But they would say, we have this, I don't know, this super cool microscope and we'll collaborate with you and we can do things down to this level of resolution or something like that. That's what a letter of support is. Or we have a core. This core will be able to do your mass spec analysis or bioinformatics or anything like that. Those are letters of support to help you get your research done. The letter of reference is more about you and what your capacity is or what your track record is to do the science. And those are not relevant here.
All right. We recognize the specific aims page should be used to address the challenge, innovation, and impact and rationale, and not primarily to list specific objectives of the research. However, should the specific aims page included numbered aims, as is typical, we notice numbered aims in the examples provided online.
Yeah, that's totally up to you. If you want to number them or you want to just list them, this is the three areas we're gonna work on to achieve this transformative project or something. That's up to you. But, just if you if you use your real estate in that way and do not convince the reviewers of the transformative potential of the work, again, you will be doing yourself a disservice. So think about the audience and how that one page is going to be reviewed, remembering that approximately half of the applications are triaged at that stage, right? So don't use your space in a way that makes the most sense for how you want your project reviewed.
All right. And how do you handle the human subject section of the proposal if we are planning a large number of empirical projects? For example, interviews, surveys, focus groups, observation, etc. Upwards of 10 over the award period. How much detail should we include for each, especially given the goal of flexibility within this award? So I guess first off, how do you handle the human subject section for these
Yeah.
large?
Yeah, you have to handle human subjects the way you would for any R01. So that has to be completed and has to be accurate, and it will be read by reviewers, although it should not impact the score, but it will be read. And yeah, but I guess I don't understand what is meant by how much detail. You don't need all the detail in the research strategy, but you need the appropriate amount of detail for the human subjects, the safety, and all of that to be evaluated. Was there a second part to that, Becky?
It was how much detail to
Oh,
include.
okay.
All right. Is there any advice in regards to applications using multiple institutes with multiple overheads?
No, the advice is to do the research in a way that's going to be most successful. You subcontract however your grants office wants you to subcontract. Um, they negotiate overhead and it's dealt with at that level. So no, I don't have advice about that.
Okay. All right. 12 pages seems like a lot for little or no preliminary data and little or no experimental plans. So maybe you can talk about that.
Oh my. Well, if you can write everything in 11 pages, I'm sure that's fine too. I mean, you're right in that, if you think about a regular R01, all the detail that you need for it, that does fill up 12 pages very well. But, I would argue that to articulate the status of the field to a broad audience might take a little longer than what you would do with a traditional R01 application, your introduction, your background, however you decide to subtitle it. But, you know, I've never seen a problem with people filling the space if these are written well and are successful. If you don't need all the space, don't use it. But I think make the case that you're proposing transformative work here. So sometimes that can take a little bit longer to tell a story about, to articulate well, than it would to do an introduction for a standard R01.
All right.
And you don't have to fill all 12 pages.
Is it allowable to include a simple explanatory cartoon-like diagram in the specific aims page?
Sure, you can put cartoons in or figures, images, yeah.
Yeah, just make sure you double check those images for violations of anonymity.
Yes.
The tool, Mei Ching's here, maybe you can answer it. I don't believe
Yes,
that
the
tracking
tool is
tool-
going to be able to look at images now this year. It
Oh, it
could
is.
not
Okay.
in years past. Right, Mei Ching?
Yes, yeah, so we will have it for this year.
Yeah, so that's a big advance. It's nice. I mean, don't put something in the figure that says, artwork by some name, right? Because that's a name. So don't do things like that. But, sometimes, yeah, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Models and things like that, pictures can be great.
Yeah. Just one thing is The current online track tool doesn't have the image detection capability, but we will have it after you submit application, and then NIH review it administratively. That part, we will have the image detection included.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, that's different than what I understood. Okay, be careful then, because then I was wrong. Your images, if you put them in the document, they will not be able to be screened by track. It'll just be ignored as an image. So be really careful with images then.
All right. Thank you. Is this mechanism designed for more senior level researchers and research teams?
It's not designed for more senior level individuals. I mean, I've seen ESIs come in with TRA applications. I've also seen people that are, maybe it's their second grant or something come in, but it's not really designed for any one subset of applicants with respect to their experience or stage of career. No, it's open for everyone.
All right. And if the track is clean, does that guarantee anonymity?
Um, in theory, it does, but if there's a change made that we detect, then of course not. But my guess is that I've never seen a clean one, because it will err on the side, it's very conservative, it will err on the side of finding violations. Yeah.
All right. All right.
Can I comment on this one?
Yeah.
I think specific aims, because it is one page, so normally come out clean, should be
Yeah.
no problem. The main part is the research strategies, because it covers different formats and different many pages. So that one needs to be careful,
Yeah.
even if it's come out clean.
Yeah,
But
that's a good point.
out to the track support, if anything.
All right. Thank you. Can you repeat how we view the example grants?
So if you go to our website, I don't know if that's on the screen right
It
now.
is, yeah.
If you go to our website and you go over on the right-hand side somewhere there, there are samples. It says samples. It might be in the award application guide. I can't remember, but it'll say very clearly samples. And most of these, it's really important that most of these were not from 2021 and later. So most of them are not anonymized, but I think we have one or two up there now that are, which is probably more helpful in some ways.
Yeah, so you can find this in a couple ways. Go to the application and award guide. There's a tile at the bottom of the page that you can access it. Or if you go to the left-hand menu, there's a menu item that says example applications, and click on that, it'll take you there. All right. All right, so how should references to letters of support be addressed? Should these be referenced in the bio sketches and not in the research strategy to keep the review and research plan anonymized?
References to letters of support. Well, if you're going to include a letter of support from Dr. So-and-so at University of wherever, you just don't put their name and where they're from. You'd say, we are obtaining support in confocal microscopy from an expert in that area. And you can say letter of support. And once the application, if you make it to the third part of the review, then they'll be able to read it. But just don't mention the individual's name and don't mention where they're located. I'm going to put the link in for the samples in the chat. I went and found it. So
Thank you.
y'all can click on that. It'll take you to the samples. There are only 3, and the top one, which is actually health equity research, someone asked about, is the only one that's anonymized. The other 2 are not, but there's 3 there.
All right. Could you say more about the distinction between the two sections on the aims page? So the significance section is pretty similar to the insight section to me, but I'd love to hear more from you all.
Well, can you put that slide back up, Becky? That would help me.
Yes.
So the way to think about this is think about who's reading it. There you go.
Yeah.
And how it will be reviewed, okay? So significance, innovation, impact. You're right. I think that those are words that we're all sort of used to, and you know, we can describe those, I hope, about our work pretty clearly. Now, insight and rationale, that might be more like, how is this going to shift a paradigm? What is it that you're going to be revealing? That to me is the insight. The rationale might be a little bit more about how you're going to do it. And someone asked earlier about whether I can have 1, 2, 3, the aims listed out. And, you know, if you're going to have them, that might be the place to think about putting them. You can say, we're going to do this, whatever it is, in a mouse model, then we're going to move into a pig model or something. And our rationale for that is so and so, right? So in my mind, the top version is more about is articulating why this is an important problem, why it's new and different, and how is it going to change the field, the scientific research field, if you carry out the experiments? I don't know if that's helpful. That's how I think about it.
Okay. All right. So are we required to strictly follow the proposed structure of the research strategy, or can we add additional sections or put them into a different order?
Well, you can add other subheadings if you want. Make sure you include these 5 sections. They were just on the slide, but that's okay. You have them in the funding opportunity. I think it's fine to add additional subheadings if it makes sense and makes the proposal easy to read. Don't leave any of these things out, because you know, the reviewers will be looking at multiple things in front of them, and if they don't see, I forget now the titles, but if they don't see like a rationale section, that might trigger something negative in your review. So I would definitely use those 5 suggested categories. That's why they're there. But if you need to add additional subheadings, I think that's fine.
Okay, we need to pick this up a bit. So, how do we demonstrate feasibility with anonymity?
You could, well, it depends on what kind of feasibility you're talking about. You know, some people do include some preliminary data. You can also list alternatives. You list, you know, we have experience in this area. This technique works for us. If you're pushing the boundaries of perhaps resolution or something like that, you can talk about how you would mitigate those risks and what would be your alternatives. If this doesn't work, what are you going to do? And how are you going to answer the questions that you're posing if it doesn't work? So I think making sure that you have a plan and the reviewers can appreciate you have thought about it deeply is, I think, critical for that.
All right. So can we say, quote, we have expertise or experience in, or our collaborators have expertise in the research in the anonymized sections?
You can say that, yeah. The team of researchers encompasses bioinformatics, imaging, blah, 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 whatever it is that's needed. You know, you can also just say this team or the laboratory conducting the research has all the technology available to do all this research. If it's high risk, you know, you have to talk about how it's feasible. But yeah, you can talk about in general what the background is of the team, if it's a team or just you as the PI.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to budget. So there are people asking for clarification about what it means to have a flexible budget.
Well, what we're saying is there's not a set amount that you tell us how much it will cost to do the work. So that's what we mean by flexible. We don't mean that we're gonna add money and take it away. That's not what we mean. But we are saying that you just have to justify it really clearly, and you tell us what the budget is. There's no cap.
Yeah, and you don't need to ask us for permission if you're requesting over $500,000. And you're welcome to ask for what you need for the project up to the total amount we have allocated for the initiative, which is 8 million
Yeah,
per year.
but it better be very well justified.
Yes, if you want 8 million, you better be curing everything.
Yes.
All right. If there
That is per year, by the way, that budget, the 8 million amount, I get this question all the time. That is each year per year. We have 8 million set aside for each year of this. So 8 times 5, right? So it's not 8 million over the full 5 years.
Okay, if there are no detailed experimental plans, how detailed should the budget be?
The budget should be detailed. That's not part of the first 2 phases of the review anyway, and it does not drive a score, but the budget needs to be quite detailed and everything justified. If an award is to be made and if the justification's not clear enough, you'll have to make it more clear during the just-in-time process. And we usually make these decisions late in the fiscal year. So it'd be great if your budget was well justified coming in, not in August.
Okay. All right, we have a bunch of questions about review, so I think we're going to push on to that. All right, so there are, let's see. Sorry, let's find the one that I was looking for. What is it? All right, so people were asking for clarity on whether or not applicants will be informed if their application does not proceed from phase 1 to 2 or 2 to 3.
Elena, do you want to take that?
Yes, right. So as I said, like all applications are received for the same RFA, this Notice of Funding Opportunities. And by law, so we do not release any interim results until all applications go through all phases of review. The last stage finished, 3Bs, scores are released, and only at that point you will see the outcome of the review. Even your application stopped in its review journey after phase 1. We will not release any interim one, unfortunately, so that's how it's supposed to work by regulation. So you have to wait until the complete process is completed.
Yeah, and we always get a lot of emails, panicked PIs, and you covered this, Elena, but I want to re-emphasize it. My application has disappeared, and no, it hasn't. It's in the system, but it's anonymized, so that's why you can't find it in ERA Commons anymore. So people go in to look at their score when they know that it's like March or something, and they know that the study section is meeting soon, and they don't find their application and they panic. So don't panic. It's there. You can't see it yet.
Yeah, you will get informed by me or a scientific review officer about the meeting date. And after the meeting date, typically within 3 business days, we will release score. So you will know if you got score or if your application was not discussed. And it takes us about a month to release final summary statements.
All right, how will the review panel know if you have the expertise and skills to be able to do what you're proposing to do?
Elena, did you want to take that?
Well, in the final stage, so like the applications which are discussed in phase 3B, the entire application, including your biosketches, letters of supports, will be available. But before that, that's really kind of the point of this review. So what we do want to focus reviewers' attention on the science and not on the individual, right? They have to assess whether this research idea is transformative, what's its potential for breaking new ground, innovation. Yeah, feasibility, of course, is important. So as Trish said, yeah, you have to present. So in the application, even in anonymized sections, you can say which expertise is available for this work. So this should be clearly laid out, but without naming names.
Okay. And then there is a request just to kind of go over this phase 3 AB again. So, Elena, do you want to just kind of expand on how this to here goes?
Yeah, so yeah, phase 3 basically the last stage and editorial board review. So these are the people with broad expertise. They don't know all the details of your field, but they have mail reviewers. So they have topic expert assessments. They have pre-critiques. And again, so in phase 3A, so you should think of this like individual editors working independently from their office, reading your application, only specific aims and research strategy, plus submitted mail reviews. And they think about this, they read submitted assessment, but they also take into account their own thinking and evaluation. And this is the basis for them to provide preliminary score of how they see the impact of the proposed research idea. Right, so then we will get scores from 4 editors. They're submitted independently. They are not working together at this stage. The scores will get averaged, and based on this average score, so we have to draw cutoff, right? So to select the top half of the applications, which will go to the stage 3B, which is the panel discussion. This is where editors get together around the table, physical or virtual, and they get to discuss the applications which they selected as the best ones.
All right,
Right.
excellent.
And yeah, and the final summary statements for the discussed applications. So everyone on the editorial board will vote final scores. You will get the score. Applications get discussed not only by assigned editors, but everyone on the editorial board. You will get summary of discussions, and you will get comments from mail reviewers.
All right.
Hope this is helpful.
I think that's good. Yeah.
So-
And you'll get they'll get the slides, so they'll
Yeah, the other thing that's important to note is we have this detailed on our website. So have a look there. I'm going to throw the link in the chat again. So please have a look there because we detail all of this pretty well. I'm not sure we have that exact picture, but it's there.
Okay. All right. If the concept being proposed is unique enough to identify the investigator, or if we choose to offer limited preliminary data to support feasibility, are there any risks of those concepts or preliminary data compromising anonymity in the early review stages?
Well, the point is not to hide who you are. Many people that I talk to think, again, I'll state that the reviewers are going to know who they are because their data and their technology and all that are so special that everyone's going to know it's them. That's not the point. The point is that you don't tell them who you are and you don't tell them where you are. So it doesn't matter if they can guess. I mean, it's not like, you're going to be thrown out if they can guess who you are. That's not the point. The point is simply to focus on the science, focus on the transformative potential, and that's what's being reviewed.
All right. If you place figures that are published, is that de-anonymizing?
Depends on the figure, right? If it you know, if it says from Miller et al., then yeah, that's not okay. But if you just, you know, take a panel out of a figure and use it, I think that's fine. I mean, if they're really working hard at trying to figure out who you are, that's not, again, the point, but they could probably do a reverse image search and figure it out. But that's not the point of this.
All right. All right. We're at 5. I'm going to just do some quick ones. Will there be solicitations for the Transformative Research Award with the anonymized review process in the future?
Oh,
So,
we don't know that yet. There will be solicitations for the next few years, as far as we know, but we don't know for how long this anonymized review will go on. As you know, that NIH is changing the review criteria starting in 2025, so it's likely that it won't make sense to continue this, but there's a final decision has not been reached. If you
Right.
don't know about that, you should Google it, Simplified Review NIH. Google it and read about it because it's important for your future submissions.
all right, how many applications are submitted and how many are funded?
Well, we are not allowed to tell you numbers. I can tell you in general that the success rate's around 5%. And Elena gave you some general ideas of numbers, the proportions that get cut here and there. And you can look at our website and see how many awards are made. So you can do the math, but yeah,
Okay. Are foreign collaborators allowed?
yes, yes. Foreign components are allowed.
And there are no U.S. citizenship requirements for
Correct.
this, but you must apply from a U.S.-based domestic
Yes.
institution, and that includes all PIs.
Yes, that's right. If it's a multi-PI application, the person cannot be at a foreign institution. They can be a collaborator, but not a PI.
All right, so because this goes through phases of review, do we just need to submit the specific aims page first?
Nope, the whole thing comes in at once. Sorry about that, but as for any application, it must be complete at the application due date.
All right, and people are asking for clarity. Does that $8 million, is that direct costs, or does that include total costs with indirects?
I think that's total
It's
costs.
Yep, it's total costs, yeah.
Yeah, but again, yeah, I would be shocked if anybody could justify a budget for $8 million.
Challenge. All right.
Had challenge thrown down. It's after 5 o'clock. We're tired. Challenge is thrown down. Yeah.
Is there an HRHR award that's best suited for an application by an individual researcher?
Yeah, I scribbled I misspelled things, but I scribbled an answer in there. Both the Pioneer and the New Innovator programs are more based on the individual. They're also, it has to be innovative, exciting, impactful, transformative science as well, but they're single PI programs. So you can read about them on the website. This is the only HRHR award that is open to a team. But again, it doesn't have to be a team. So it's just more flexible that way.
Right. And would this be a reasonable mechanism for building a clinical research infrastructure if that infrastructure would be transformative to the field?
You know, I'd have to think about that. I'd need more information than just that. But in theory, yes, because that I imagine would have transformative potential. You would need to be able to convince reviewers that that model could work at other institutions, because if it couldn't be disseminated and work elsewhere, that would not be, I think, very transformative. If it's only transformative at your institution, that probably would not score too well. You can email me about that. We can talk about it if you want.
Okay. There's another question just asking about alternate formatting for specific aims and if you must have the numbering.
What do you mean the numbering? I said you don't have to have the numbering. You have to have those two sections.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't get that.
All right. Those are the main questions, and I know we're over time, so I think we'll wrap up here. So thank you, Trish, Mei-Ching, Elena, for everyone for participating. Thank you for attending. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and the slides will be posted on our website at commonfund.nih.gov/TRA. Please give us a week or two to get it approved for posting, but it will be put on our website. If you have additional questions, follow-ups, whatever, please email us at transformative_awards@mail.nih.gov, and we'll be happy to answer them there. All right, so thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.